Welcome to another battle report, folks, and the next one in our series of Kursk games. The setting for this game is still in the North Salient, and apologies again for the pronunciation. It's inspired by Outflanked. Oh, for goodness sake. It's a ridge in the North Salient, further west than Ponry, Olkhavtka, that's what I'm going to say, right? Further west than Ponry, and it was a key position, probably more key than Ponry, to be honest, but Ponry tends to get most of the press these days. It was seen as being key for the Germans and key for the Soviets, so there was a major clash there. So, here's a battlefield. As you can see, we've got the ridge there, some buildings up one end, a few buildings down the other end, lots of shell craters because it's been knocked about a bit. Now we're going to be playing the mission Outflanked, that I'll show you in just a moment, and we're using the Kursk books, but the infantry for the Germans are actually from the Cross of Iron book because it's just a grenadier platoon. So Soviets, what they have is 3 platoons of Hero Strelkovy, or rather motor rifle, Hero motor rifle, and 2 platoons of 10, 1 platoon of 7, just like in the second Ponry game. So these guys are confident provided their commissar is still alive, otherwise they're reluctant, and they're good in assault. They get the 3-up save, which is a big difference between them and the normal mortar rifle. And they've got 6 mortars, ordinary mortars, 4 ZIS-2 guns, and that's the sort of core formation. And then for support they've got 4 ZIS-3 guns, so they're 57mm, but much better anti-tank, better save. Oh no, I think it's maybe the same save, but they're very hard to hit because they're veteran and they've got a 3-up skill. And then they've got 7 T-34s, which are the ordinary T-34s, so hitting a 2, skill checking on a 5, so tricky, can be tricky to use, but there's quite a few of them. And on the table at the start it's going to be everything except the T-34, so it's a good split. And then the Germans got that's it. Believe it or not, that's 99 points. You've got company command, this is a mixed Panzer Company. Company command of a Panzer IV and a Panzer III, and then 2 platoons of 2 Panzer IIIs and 1 Panzer IV. They've got 3 NEBs and an ordinary grenadier platoon in support. So we wanted to use a Panzer Company, so this is going to have to take on all of that. We'll see how it goes, folks. We really don't know. These guys have got an advantage in skill. They've got the Fritz move, as we call it, the 2 movement orders a turn. They've got some good anti-tank. Originally I was going to bring 4 KVs instead of 7 T-34s, but when we decided we were going to play these guys, we thought don't bring the KVs because KVs will just run over the top of them. Front armour 9, side armour 8. These can at least knock out the T-34s. But they've got to get past a hell of a lot of anti-tank guns, especially these guys. 3-up save on an anti-tank gun makes it very survivable, so they'll have to rely on terrain and also on the NEBs for smoke, maybe at a critical point, and also just for blowing those anti-tank guns up. So we'll go to deployment and then we'll show you the mission as well. So here is the mission. You can see the defender's deployment in blue, attacker in red, and special rules have got ambush, immediate reserves, and no spearhead for the defender. Don't worry, there's no spearheading units in here. So this here is the Soviet deployment zone. You can see this line of dice here, the darker dice representing the corridor that the objective markers can go in. And we've got one here and one here, so the opposite ends of that corridor. So Brian wants to stretch out my deployment as much as possible. Having said that, as you'll see, there's no real threat against this, so I've got some options. So my deployment, first of all, in ambush I've got my 57mm, my ZIS 3s. In reserve I've got my T-34s, and the reserves will come in this corner area here, anywhere in this corner area, so I can't bring them on right up here. So I have deployed a smaller platoon here in a reserve position, also a blocking position behind the hill. Then the ZIS-2s, anti-tank guns and infantry defending that objective. Company command there. Mortars in a good position on that hill, so they can see if the attack came over that way or that way. And then one platoon just defending that objective. Kind of redundant just now. The German deployment zone is quite restricted. It's only 8 inches out from the edges of the table, but it's got that little L shape, hence the term outflanked. So Brian is using that to get his tanks on the move, to try and get me on the side and roll me up. The nebs are ranged in already onto that front objective. You can see the objective marker, the ranged in marker. I've got a ranged in marker here, and then Brian's got his infantry over here ready for some kind of pincer attack. So there you go folks, we'll come back after turn 1. It will be the Germans to go first. German turn 1. So infantry moved up and the tanks dashed around to there for a flank attack. So it was really just shooting from these guys, and it was brutal. 2 anti-tank guns and 3 of the bases of infantry gone in 1 turn of shooting. The only thing that will stop that many infantry bases, or rather that many bases getting killed next turn, is the fact there's hardly any left. So that flank's pretty much smashed up already. I'll have to hope for reinforcements and get on the move with what I've got left. Soviet turn 1 didn't get any reserves. These guys all unpinned, and I'm just staying to take the pain. I can't run away from that objective. His tanks are too mobile. These guys though have got nothing to protect against over here, so they've moved along. They tried to follow me, didn't work. And then I tried to move the template from my mortars into this open ground and missed, couldn't roll above a 3. So over to Germans for their turn 2. German turn 2. So the infantry kept moving up. They feel that's going to be very vulnerable now, so try and get up into cover. And then Brian's moved one of his platoons to take pot shots at the anti-tank gun there. The other one moving around the back, the company command supporting in the middle. That gives them good line of sight along the back, which is handy for a number of things, and allows them to potentially attack the back of that objective. As far as shooting goes, they killed the company command, who then saved into another nearby base. And that was it. There was tons of hits, and most of the guys either made the save or Brian failed his firepower, so it kind of evened out compared to last turn. So the threadbare Germans are making some progress. Let's see what the Soviets can do. Soviet turn 2, no reserves. I popped the ambush here. There's not a lot of good places to drop the ambush, to be honest. But it protects the back channel, and these guys can't get wheeled around. The infantry didn't unpin. The anti-tank guns did. They turned to face these guys and missed. The ambush got 1 hit, and Brian rolled a 5 for his save, so it bounced. So it wasn't much of an ambush. The guys can just get the hell out of dodge now. These infantry have kept moving up, so they're in a position to support that objective, and I've still got those reserve infantry there. Oh, and the mortars ranged in the 3rd attempt. That took 6 dice to get a range in there, but didn't hit anything. I don't think Brian will be hanging about there to worry about the ranged in marker. Next turn you'll be moving forward. So over to Germans then for turn 3. So German turn 3, the infantry moved up, keeping away from the edge of that field so they can move in in strength when they're ready. These tanks actually stayed facing the anti-tank guns. These ones here are slipping back, but they're on the edge of the hill. These guys stayed put. Now, as far as shooting goes, these tanks fired, got one hit, but didn't kill anything, and then shooted and scooted out of the way. These guys here fired, and the combined efforts against the anti-tank guns, they managed to kill one. The Nebs lifted their barrage because they were actually too close. That's the problem with these big templates, the salvo weapons. They were too close to these guys, even though they're really quite far away. So the ranged in first attempt, got loads and loads of hits, but everybody made their save. Anybody that didn't, I don't think there was many that didn't, the firepower was failed. Next turn though, they'll have to have a reroll save, so that'll make a big difference. So the attack's kind of stalled, but they're getting some progress over here, so I don't think Brian can afford to just sit behind there. He's going to have to come at me. So we'll see. I'm definitely going to get my reserves next turn, whatever happens anyway. So Soviet turn 3, the reserves arrive automatically. I moved one of the anti-tank guns out of the way a bit so these tanks could get through. They can move really quite fast, the T-34s. You can see the infantry moving out from these buildings, they unpinned. The infantry to the front there didn't. The anti-tank gun legged it, which, fair enough, there was only one left. This reserve platoon have moved up. See what trouble they can get themselves into. These guys are just staying, gone to ground. It'll make it very difficult for them if they come around the flank and try a shoot and scoot thing. As far as shooting goes then, because those guys are in the wheat fields, the infantry on the same level as them couldn't see them, which just left the mortars, and they rolled a 1, a 1 and a 4 to range in, so there was nothing there at all. So over to the Germans then for the turn 4, and we'll see what Brian can do to deal with all this. It's not going to be easy, I don't think. German turn 4. The infantry have moved up into the field. They can contest the objective and in a position to shoot in a couple of different directions. The platoon here didn't really fancy dealing with those anti-tank guns, so they dashed around to here. These guys pretty much stayed put, as did the company command, but this one's dropped off to give a bit of flank protection. Brian's worried I can Congo line these tanks. He'd only get 4 dice of counter fire if I came in this way, and that's always something that we're aware of after playing so many games. As far as shooting goes, the artillery ranged in again and killed the base of infantry, but also the commissar, so these guys are now reluctant, which isn't very good. These guys tried a few shots up onto the hill but didn't get anything effective. So I think Brian's waiting for me to come charging around that corner, but I don't need to. I've just got to hold the objective. I do need to push him back, but that's just one platoon infantry, so we'll see what happens. Over to Soviet turn 4. Soviet turn 7. The tanks just kind of stayed put. The anti-tank guns have manoeuvred a little bit. These infantry unpinned. These infantry moved up. These infantry moved around a bit for a few more shots, and then in shooting, the artillery failed to range in. One anti-tank on a line of sight on a Panzer III and missed. And then these guys, because they weren't dug in, took a hell of a lot of casualties to rifle fire. In retrospect, there should have been a smoke bomb put down there to protect them. So that would have given them one turn to get dug in, at least. I know going for the juicy targets and getting the casualties on the other side is attractive, but keeping that one platoon infantry alive is probably more important. But they're still contesting the objective. And I get the feeling that Brian will have to put more stuff in there. It could get quite close quarters next. We'll see what happens. German turn 5. So in this turn, these Panzer III stayed put to do some shooting. They stayed put to machine gun, as these guys moved up to machine gun, these guys unpinned and dug in. And then for shooting, these Panzer IIIs, they managed to hit the only visible anti-tank gun and failed one of its saves, but he failed his firepower. So it survived and they shooted and scooted out of the way. Over here, lots and lots of machine gun shots managed to kill the Commissar again. He really should have been in the building, I think. And one of the bases in the building. And then the Nebs lifted the bombardment onto these guys, who were kind of coming in behind here. And as you can see, a couple of bases got clobbered. So I'll have to decide what I want to do about all these guys coming up around the hill, and if they're a threat or if I need to take action next turn. Soviet turn 5. So what happened this turn? The guys didn't unpin and didn't dig in, so they're in a whole lot of trouble. They tried to dig in, fields rather. Anti-tank guns are shifting around a little bit. One got line of sight, and then I thought, to hell with the T-34s are going to get into the fight here. So the anti-tank gun killed a Panzer III, the T-34s bailed a Panzer III. And then the mortars actually managed to range in and killed a base of infantry. Any other shooting did nothing to the infantry. These guys up here dug in, the ones that are in the open anyway. So next turn's critical for Brian. That's one reason why I went at this point. He's going to have to close in with me or risk being pushed away from the objective. So we'll see what he decides to do. German turn 6. So what happened in that turn? The Panzer III didn't bail in, but the platoon made its last stand. And some tanks stayed still, some tanks moved. The company HQ had to use a blitz to get line of sight. And then as far as firing goes, there was a few saves made. There wasn't as many hits as there could have been. But one was bailed and 2 were destroyed. The long barrel Panzer IVs were doing most of the damage. Then over here, the Nebs caused more damage, killing the Commissar again. So there's no Commissars left on the table. It's a dangerous job being a Commissar in this game. So, well, I have to decide if I want to just stand and shoot or do some manoeuvring and try to get around the side. I'm only anti-tank 9. It's not very good, but we'll see what happens. So, end of Soviet turn 6, and it's game over. It's kind of gone the way I actually expected it to. Once the Soviets got their guys over into the fight, it was too much, too many of them really for the Germans to contend with. So what happened was, first of all, these guys managed to unpin and legged over here in a position to launch an assault. The guys that were here moved up to here. The guys that were on here readied themselves. The anti-tank guns moved around the side a bit. The T-34s got in position for some flanking shots. And as far as shooting goes, one Panzer IV got bailed out by the SIS-3s. A Panzer IV here got destroyed with a hit on the side from T-34s. And then the assaults went in. And they all successfully got in. There wasn't enough counter fire. And here the Germans killed a base on the way in, lost a base in assault, and then legged it. And then just a couple of bases run in against this what was bailed out Panzer III, and even with the company command in the position to re-roll the motivation checks, rolled 2 1s. A re-roll off a 1 with another 1 is not much of a re-roll. So they legged it once again, and this was captured as a result, but also there was no prospect of any Germans being within 8 inches of the objective at the end of the defending player's 6th turn. So we'll go over to a recap, guys, and think about the game, the list, and the prospects of such a list. So hopefully you enjoyed that game. It kind of went the way we expected, like once the Soviets were all in position, they kind of just swamped that very small number of German infantry and tanks. But don't let that put you off playing a Panzer Company. That particular mission, like a head-on clash of a very small number of elites, things that are not hard to kill if you hit them against that solid wall. It was probably the worst mission they could have played. There may be more mobile missions that they could be more effective in, though I'm not sure how they would handle being in a defensive mission because there's so few platoons. For the Soviets, they had a really good defensive position on that ridge, even though they were spread out quite a bit. Once the reserves came on, they could quickly get to a position where they could counter-attack. I think the tanks, if they'd gone head-on against the German tanks for any length of time, were probably going to get wiped out. That seems to be the case, so no surprises there. But they were able to get themselves out of line of sight behind a hill and shoot out, which was very effective. And then the infantry was able to just swarm over, as you've seen, to at the critical time, that turn 6, at the critical time to just get in and push the Germans away, so that when you're working out the victory conditions at that critical turn, they've got them in their favour. They probably could have held on there because the Germans were so small in number. But that mission's probably a good example of the need to counter-attack when you're a defender, and counter-attack at the right time, or as good a time as you can, because sometimes the dice reserves or whatever don't give you the choice, but there I had everything in place and they're able to do a nice solid counter-attack with everybody coming together on turn 6, pushing the Germans away. So, as I said, don't give up on the German medium tanks as a company, but give it some thought for what you've seen in the game and how you might want to tweak the platoons, boost them, thin them down a bit, get more support and such likes. So we're going to have another battle at Olkhavtka next. The Germans will be on the attack again, and this time we're going to use a Panzer Grenadier Company. So not too many tanks, because it's going to be a hell of a lot of half-tracks. So it's quite an impressive force, so we'll see how they do in a headlong attack against the Soviet dug-in position. Thanks for watching, folks. Please like and subscribe, because it helps us get these videos higher up in the algorithms of the YouTube world, and gets more people to see them and share the hobby. Thanks again.